Can you ever truly know someone? Your teachers, your friendly neighbor, your friends, your spouse? It just may be the most unsettling thing to realize that we never truly can. So it's no surprise that in just about every culture across the world, there are myths and legends about dark, deceptive entities taking on the form of regular human beings. These are stories of evil demons that pretend to be human. The Incubus and Succubus, two of the most infamous demons that disguise themselves as humans. These demons have been part of folklore for centuries. The Incubus is a male demon that usually takes the form of a man to seduce women. It's said that the Incubus visits women while they're asleep, using its human disguise to get close. As you can imagine, an encounter with an incubus is often described as extremely disturbing. Women would wake up feeling exhausted or traumatized with no clear memory of what had happened. Sometimes the incubus is blamed for nightmares and sleep paralysis. Then you have the succubus, the female counterpart of the incubus, taking on the appearance of an attractive woman to seduce men, often in their dreams. These seductive demons are known for their charm and incredibly attractive human disguises, making them hard to resist. But just like the incubus, the succubus uses her human guise to drain the life energy or vitality from her victims. Men who encounter a succubus might feel drained or sickly afterward, and in some tales they even suffer from mysterious illnesses or even death. We've all seen these things in movies and TV, even when they're not actually referred to outright as an incubus or a succubus. The trope of a seductive entity that lures in its victims before turning on them is pretty common. I mean, take your classic vampire, for instance, or that scene from The Shining where the hot lady Jack Nicholson is making out with turns into an old rotting hag. Scarring. Aswang is an umbrella term for malevolent creatures in Filipino folklore. So there are different types. You have your witch type creatures, vampire type monsters, a whole bunch, but almost all of them shapeshift. By day, an Aswang might blend right into regular society, but come nightfall, the Aswang transforms into its true monstrous form, whatever it may be. I think my favorite has to be the Viscera sucker, which is even ghastlier than it sounds. These demons take the form of a beautiful woman by day, and by night, they grow wings and detach their upper torso from their legs before flying out into the night in search of food. Their diet consisting of people's internal organs, which they suck out with their long tongues. They especially love preying on pregnant women. These creatures are said to not only take on very convincing human forms, but are also skilled at mimicking human behavior. You might find yourself living next to someone who's actually an Aswang without ever realizing it. This next one is a lot more subtle, but genuinely creepy. The Doppelganger. So this is a word you've probably all heard before, often used to describe someone who looks a lot like you, like, oh damn, he looks like your doppelganger. But in German folklore, a doppelganger is actually a malevolent demon. A supernatural lookalike or double of a living person who looks exactly like you, but of course, isn't you. The doppelganger is traditionally seen as an omen of bad luck or impending doom. In some stories, seeing your double can mean that something terrible is about to happen to you or someone you care about. And as you can imagine, doppelgangers are said to use their appearance to impersonate or deceive. In some legends, a doppelganger can replace a person, kind of an invasion of the body snatchers type of thing, but not all stories about doppelgangers are malevolent, and sometimes they're seen as entities that appear to warn or challenge the person that they resemble. Huli-jing, or fox spirits from Chinese mythology, are known for their ability to shapeshift, and they often use this power to take on human forms. A Huli-jing can transform into a stunningly beautiful woman, which they sometimes use to charm and seduce men. Fox spirits aren't always malevolent, but the stories where they are will often revolve around them using their human disguises to trick or manipulate their victims. Nowadays, Huli-jing is an insult in Mandarin and Cantonese, a very specific term used to describe a woman who gets involved with married men. But as I said, the folklore surrounding Huli-jing isn't always bad. These fox spirits are often associated with magical powers and have a range of different abilities. In some tales, they're depicted as being more neutral or even benevolent, helping humans or protecting certain places. And if a nine-tailed fox spirit looks familiar to you, that's because these creatures also made their way into Japanese mythology. which of course led to fox demons showing up in anime like Naruto, Inuyasha, and a whole long list of others. Next, we have Chaneque. These little guys come from Mexican folklore, particularly from the Yucatan Peninsula. They're tiny, mischievous little beings that looks like old men or women, often just a few feet tall. They're kinda elf-like. Picture Dobby. Their main goal is to play tricks on people, especially in the jungle or forest. Chaneque are known for leading travelers astray, making them lose their way or forget where they're going. If you've ever heard of someone getting lost in the woods for no apparent reason, especially if they happened to be in Mexico, the Chaneque might be the culprit. They love to mess with people, making them feel disoriented or causing them to wander around aimlessly. One of their favorite tricks is to make it seem like time has passed when it actually hasn't, or vice versa. Stories of people walking through the forest and suddenly realizing hours have gone by but swearing it only felt like minutes have been attributed to these creatures for centuries. But Chaneque aren't usually harmful in a physical sense. Their antics can be annoying or unsettling, but I'd rather deal with one of these than a winged gut-sucking Aswang. But if you really would prefer a casual stroll through the woods without any shenanigans, some believe that offering small gifts like food or tobacco can help keep them at bay. Jinns come from Arabic folklore and Islamic beliefs. They're often known as genies here in the West, which automatically makes you picture a friendly blue guy popping out of a bottle, but in the original context they're a lot more complicated and can be pretty terrifying. Jinn are supernatural creatures that exist alongside humans. They're known for having free will, just like us, which means they can be good, bad, or anywhere in between. And they take on many different forms, from animals like snakes or insects to humans. This makes them particularly sneaky and dangerous. They might pretend to be human to manipulate people, or in some cases just for their own amusement. For example, a Jinn might disguise itself as a friendly stranger to gain someone's trust and then lead them into danger, or they might take on the appearance of someone familiar to simply mess with their victims. There are stories of Jinn even mating with humans and having offspring, and in your more kind of familiar demonic sense, they're known to possess people's bodies as well. Rakshasa can be found in Buddhism, Jainism, and Hindu mythology. They're often depicted as powerful demons or evil spirits with a taste for chaos and destruction. They can change shape at will, which is bad considering the fact that they are known to like eating humans. Unlike creatures like Chaneque, who are more involved in playful trickery, Rakshasa have a much more sinister vibe. They're often portrayed being very cunning and manipulative, using their shape-shifting ability to deceive and harm their victims. One of the most famous Rakshasa in Hindu epic literature is Ravana from the Ramayana, a powerful demon king with 10 heads, often depicted as evil, but very sophisticated at the same time. A learned scholar and capable ruler, Rakshasas like Ravana often have very big ambitions, which can cause major problems in the world. Their ability to change shape makes them difficult to detect and even harder to defeat. Do you have a fear of snakes? If so, you'd never want to cross paths with Nure-onna, a yokai from Japanese folklore and mythology. There are tons of different yokai which are sort of like Japanese demons. This particular yokai, though, in its true form, is a gigantic snake with a woman's head. Basically a combination of a serpent and the ghost girl from The Ring. Nightmares for days. You know when people say that what you picture in your own head is always going to be scarier than something that can ever be described or shown on screen? That's just not the case when it comes to Japan. This isn't even remotely close to being the weirdest or scariest type of yokai, but it's still effectively terrifying. I don't know, just they always find a way to make something extra scary and bizarre. The humanish head of a Nure-onna often has yellow eyes, a forked tongue, and long matted black hair that's always wet, like it's just slithered out of a river dripping with water. But Nure-onna are deceptive. They don't just show up as these horrific snake monsters right out the gate. Anyone with good sense would just turn around and run long before getting close. Instead, these yokai often take the form of a regular woman at first. They might pretend to be in distress, maybe holding what looks like an infant, or just crying for help, and once they've got you close enough, they reveal their true form, shifting from that harmless woman to this. And at that point, it's usually too late to get away. Jiangshi, these creatures come from Chinese folklore and are often translated as hopping vampires, which sounds cute, but it's not. They're a bit different from the usual vampire stories you might be familiar with. Instead of the suave, seductive type, Jiangshi is more of a creepy undead creature that moves around by hopping. They're kind of more like zombies that can't walk properly, so they just hop to get around. It sounds kind of silly, and in some of the movies they show up in, it kind of looks funny, but at the same time, it's creepy. Something about that surreal image of a pale, gaunt, undead creature in Qing Dynasty clothing just hopping around just makes my skin crawl a little. Jiangshi are also said to have a stiff, unnatural posture thanks to rigor mortis. Their fingers are capped with long, sharp fingernails, which they use to scratch or claw at their victims, and they're very aggressive, feeding on the life force of living people. They're said to be drawn to the warmth of the living and will attack anyone they come across. Because they're technically undead too, they can only be killed through specific methods. But luckily, they have a lot of weaknesses and can be easily distracted. They're terrified of their own reflection. They usually leave at the sound of a rooster's call, because that means daylight is approaching, and they have an aversion to sunlight, just like your standard vampires. You can use a variety of talismans to keep them at bay as well, and if you drop a bunch of coins on the ground, they'll often stop what they're doing to bend down and count them. Finishing off with some Celtic folklore, we have the Puca. Pucas are shapeshifters who can take on many different forms. It's known for being both mischievous and malevolent, which makes it a bit of a wild card when it comes to encounters. The Puca can transform into a wide variety of animals, but it's often described as a dark horse-like creature with glowing eyes. It might also take the form of a goat, rabbit, or, of course, a human, but their human forms aren't always very convincing. They often retain some animal traits like pointy ears or tails, dead giveaways that you're not dealing with a real person. When it shows up as a horse though, it's said to be especially dangerous because it can trick people into riding it, and once you're on its back, it'll just gallop off wildly, taking you on a really terrifying ride. But Puca encounters rarely ever end in death. For the most part, they act more as tricksters than serious physical threats. It's known to play mind games, causing confusion and fear. It might lead people astray, causing them to get lost or leading them to dangerous places. But some of these creatures also choose to warn people of danger rather than lead them into it. I guess when it comes to demons and paranormal entities, you got good ones and bad ones, just like you got good people and pieces of crap. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.